the one out here doing.
Exactly. That's what I said.
And I knew I was right. Every time I feel that intuition of I'm right.
How do he not see that?
That's what I'm saying. What have I done to you for you to do
Because
me
it
like
sure
this?
isn't because you're not practice. That damn bike out the way.
Do you need to move it?
After years filled with arguments, broken promises, and a constant cycle of disappointment, Rasheeda finally reached her limit. She stood in the center of her living room, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, her heart pounding like a drum, in her ears. The air felt heavy, charged with emotions she could no longer hold back. The man she had once trusted the most, Kirk Frost, now felt like a stranger. The bond they once shared had eroded, replaced by frustration, anger, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal. "I'm done, Kirk. This is it. I can't do this anymore," Rasheeda said, her voice firm and unwavering. The words carried the weight of years of pain and disappointment. They hung in the air, heavy and final, like the calm before a thunderstorm. Kirk froze for a moment, caught off guard by the sheer force of her declaration. He shifted on his feet, trying to mask his discomfort, his usual confidence visibly shaken. "Come on, baby, let's talk this through," Kirk said, his tone softer now, almost pleading. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that once made her smile. But now, it only annoyed her. She had seen this act too many times before, and she wasn't falling for it anymore. Her patience had run out, and she wasn't about to let his. Familiar tactics sway her again. Rasheeda's eyes narrowed, and her voice rose with each word. "You think this is how a family works? Lies, deceit, and betrayal? Do you even hear yourself?" The fire in her tone matched the intensity in her eyes. For the first time, Kirk looked small, his usual bravado shrinking under her unrelenting gaze. She continued, her voice steady but sharp. "I've given you chance after chance, Kirk. I've bent over backward trying to make this work, trying to believe in you, but what did you do? You took my trust and stomped all over it. I can't keep doing this." Each word was like a stone, thrown into a calm lake, sending ripples of finality through their fractured relationship. Kirk's voice wavered as he tried to defend himself. "I know I messed up, but I can change. Just give me one more chance." His eyes searched hers for a glimmer of hope, but all he found was resolve. The woman standing before him wasn't the same person who used to forgive so easily. Rasheeda had fought hard to rebuild her self-worth, piece by piece, and she wasn't going to let him tear it all down again. Her response was swift and unyielding. "You've had more chances than anyone deserves, Kirk. I'm done waiting for you to become someone you're not." Her voice carried a certainty that left no room for negotiation. Years of heartache had taken their toll, and Rasheeda was done carrying the weight of his mistakes. Kirk's frustration bubbled over, and his tone turned bitter. "You're going to regret this. You're throwing everything away." But his words no longer had power over her. Rasheeda met his anger with a calm defiance, a small, confident smile playing on her lips. "Regret?" she said, her voice almost a whisper. "No, Kirk. Regret is what I felt every time I stayed when I should have walked away." The room seemed to shrink around them as Kirk hastily grabbed his belongings, shoving clothes and random items into a bag. His movements were rushed, almost frantic, as if he couldn't stand to be in the same space for another moment. Rasheeda watched him without a trace of emotion. She felt no sadness, no longing, just a profound sense of relief. The man before her was no longer the person she had once loved, and she was finally ready to let him go. As he zipped up his bag and slung it over his shoulder, Kirk shot her one last glance. "You'll see what you're missing," he said coldly, his voice laced with bitterness. Rasheeda didn't flinch. She simply stood there, unmoving, as he stormed out the door. The sound of it slamming shut echoed through the house, marking the end of an era. For a moment, the silence that followed felt overwhelming. The weight of everything that had just happened settled on Rasheeda's shoulders. But instead of feeling burdened, she felt free. She took a deep breath, the kind that seemed to fill every corner of her lungs, and exhaled slowly. The air seemed lighter now, the tension that had suffocated her for so long finally gone. "I deserve better," she said aloud, her voice steady and full of conviction. The words felt like a declaration, a promise to herself that she would no longer settle for less than she deserved. She walked over to the window and looked out, the world outside suddenly feeling full of possibilities. For the first time in years, she felt like her life was her own. The memories of their relationship played in her mind like a film reel. The good times, the laughter, and the love they had once shared now felt distant, overshadowed by the lies and betrayal that had poisoned everything. Rasheeda knew she couldn't change the past, but she also knew she didn't have to be defined by it. She had the power to write a new chapter, one where she was in control. As she sat down on the couch, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, moments of doubt, and times when she'd have to remind herself why she had chosen this path. But deep down, she knew she had made the right decision. She had chosen herself. And that was something she hadn't done in a long time. Meanwhile, on the other side of the door, Kirk stood frozen for a moment, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. He had lost more than just a place to stay. He had lost the woman who had stood by him through everything, who had believed in him even when he didn't deserve it. The weight of his actions pressed down on him, but it was too late to turn back. Rasheeda, however, wasn't looking back. She was focused on the future, on the life she was ready to build for herself. The silence in the house no longer felt oppressive. It felt peaceful, filled with the promise of new beginnings. She whispered to herself, "This is my time. This is my life." With those words, she took her first steps toward a future that was entirely her own. Rasheeda had made up her mind, and now Kirk had to deal with the fallout of everything he had done. He couldn't just stroll back into her life as if nothing had happened. She was much stronger and more resilient than he had ever realized, and he was about to learn how hard it would be to try and repair what he had broken. The situation had reached a boiling point, and everyone was on edge, waiting to see if Kirk could step up, or if the tension between them would spiral even further out of control. Rasheeda wasn't the same woman she used to be. She had grown tired of dealing with betrayal and lies, and Kirk would soon understand that some boundaries, once crossed, leave permanent damage. Rasheeda was done tolerating the constant hurt, and her strength showed through in every action she took. She wasn't going to let Kirk's behavior continue to weigh her down. She was going through a tough time, trying to navigate the pain caused by Kirk's repeated dishonesty. After everything she had endured, Rasheeda had finally decided enough was enough. Over the years, she had put up with his lies, cheating, and manipulative ways. But now she was ready to walk away. Kirk's behavior had pushed her to a breaking point, and she no longer wanted him to have any influence over her life, or even their children's lives. She had seen too much, and it had become clear that Kirk wasn't going to change. People who followed their story knew Rasheeda had been through hell. Kirk had built a reputation as a liar, a cheater, and someone who would go to great lengths to cover up his misdeeds. One of the most heartbreaking moments came when Jasmine revealed that she had a child with Kirk. Even then, Kirk tried to deny everything, acting like he didn't know Jasmine and brushing it off as if it were some elaborate hoax. When Carly spilled the details to Rasheeda, Kirk even tried to convince her that it was all a joke. But Rasheeda wasn't buying it. She had the evidence to prove otherwise. She had seen the messages between Kirk and Jasmine, and there was no mistaking what had been happening. Kirk stood there, denying everything, even when the truth was staring them both in the face. It was one of those moments where you couldn't believe the lengths someone would go to hide their mistakes. Rasheeda had all the proof she needed, and Kirk's attempts to manipulate the situation only made things worse. For years, Rasheeda had shown incredible patience, trying to hold their marriage together despite the turmoil. But the news of their potential divorce after 25 years of marriage didn't shock those who had followed their journey. Their relationship had been rocky for a long time, with Kirk repeatedly dodging accountability for his actions. Now it seemed like he was finally being forced to face the music. The rumors about their divorce weren't just whispers anymore. They were becoming a reality, and the fallout was going to be messy. One of the most publicized issues in their marriage was Kirk fathering a child outside of their relationship. It wasn't just a private betrayal, it played out in front of millions on their reality show. Despite the humiliation and the pain, Rasheeda stood by Kirk, supporting him through the scandals and the public backlash. She had put in so much effort to make things work, but even her strongest efforts couldn't withstand the constant storm of Kirk's behavior.